All right. Let us begin. First of all, let me bring up. So we are currently, my system has the time 11:34 IST, and it's November 10th. Let me open up another thing. And you can see that I have MySQL installed. Now, okay, setting the agenda for the today's session. So what I'm going to present is a little bit of experimentation that I did yesterday with Sequelize and MySQL, and how the parameter affects the time that we store, and what does that mean for us. So this is something that is in agenda for today, and I will take you step by step through what I did and what it means for us. So first thing first, let me also show you Confluence. Let me open the Confluence so that I have a reference of the talking point. Okay, so I showed you that I have my PC that is running in the IST time zone, right? This is where it is. It is 11:34:35 now. I also have MySQL server installed, and if I see the time here, you will see that it also shows 11:36, which is the current Indian time, 11:36. Now, I can also see the time by another method. It is still shows the same time, 11:36. That is the Indian time zone. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the application that we have, rewards point system. And when I run it, this is the configuration that we are going to see that Sequelize will use, because in our application, Sequelize connects to the MySQL database, and then all the operations happen through Sequelize. And these are the connection parameters. This is nothing but in the config folder, we have a config.json. This is a standard Sequelize stuff. This is what we are using. And we will be using development environment, since it is happening in the my local development system. And it does, as you can see, there are just 3 standard options, and there is nothing related to time zone in these options, right?
Yeah.
I will be using phpMyAdmin just to see what is in the MySQL database. It does not matter whether you use MySQL Workbench or you just use CLI, right? It's just a way to see what is in the database. Now, first thing first, what I will do is, this is the experiment. I will be running an API call. This API call does, what this API call does is basically it adds a record into the table. Now the table is this. I will show you my phpMyAdmin and points expiration table. If I see, it is empty right now. There is nothing in this table. And I will be adding a record into this table through running this API call. Now, as we all know, Sequelize has created at and updated at, which are date time fields, which are automatically updated whenever you add a new record. You can see there is no mention of time related parameters in the body. And also in the control, at the controller level in the code, we are not doing any time related operations. So those will come automatically. Now, this is the first step of the experiment. I will add a record, and I will only use default options, and then we'll see in which time zone that date time field is added, or what exactly is that date time field showing. Then I will change the, I will add a parameter into the connection. I will restart the server, and I will add another record, and then we'll see what the changes are, and we'll do it one more time. So first we'll do it for default, then we'll do it for India time, and then we'll do it for Singapore time, and then we'll compare all 3 of them and see what we learn out of it. So let me do the default addition. So right now, nothing is there in the configuration parameters. I will just make sure that the server is running. Let me I will do npm run local. I am just starting my application here. All right, so our application is now running. We can see that still the table is empty. Now I will run this API call, and this should give us send. So as we can see that the status is 201 created. That means something has been added into the database, and it is a success response. So let me go to the database now. The expected operation here is that this table will have one record now. And as we can see, there is one record here. Let me go to the created at section. So as you can see, currently the system time is 11:40, right? When the query ran, when I actually did the API operation, the time was 11:39, and the created at field says 0609. If I go to Google and I do current time UTC, it says 6010. So what this means for us is that when we did not have any connection parameters in the Sequelize configuration file, and we ran a query at 11:39 local time, that is my system's time, the value that was added into the database was added based on the UTC time zone, right? Because 11:39 my local time is 609 UTC time. So this is how Sequelize created a connection and added and added that field. Basically, while creating the connection, Sequelize used UTC time. Is it clear till now?
Is it clear for everyone?
As of now, okay. I mean, I'm okay.
Yeah.
I'm also okay.
Perfect. If not, I will repeat any of the points. If you have any doubt, any query whatsoever, just please feel free to ask me. Now let me do the change. So here in the development environment, first of all, what I'll do is I will stop my server, and I will exit from the MySQL. Right now, what I'll do is I will go here and add a time zone parameter, and in the time zone parameter I will give Asia/Calcutta. That is Indian time zone, which is the current in my system, 11:42:43, whatever this is, right? Now what I'll do is I will go to I will restart my MySQL service. First of all, let me just check the status. It should be running, and then I'll restart it.
So Chingmei, this change actually only is in your source code. I think we don't need to actually restart the MySQL. What do you think?
We don't need to. I actually did that yesterday. I just do this as a habit of force of
okay.
habit. I'll skip the restarting part. I'll just so I will start the system again, right? As you can see, this message means that our database connection has been established, and okay, I think I did some error in the no, not Sequelize. Moment. These are all the time zones that are supported, just for and you can see, you can either mention it as Asia, Calcutta, Asia, Singapore, or you can also mention it as just, sorry, what did I do?
530.
You can also mention it as offset, that is plus 530, which is nothing but my current local time zone, right? So I save this, the database has restarted. This message means the database connection has been established. And now what I'll do is I'll go back to the, so this is our table, I'll refresh this, still nothing is here, right? I will go to the Postman. Right now it is 11:44:56. Let me give it a 3 second. It is 11:45 now. I will run the query. Query ran at 11:45, success. Now I'll go and refresh this. So as you can see, a second record is added here. The time of created at now represents 11:45, which is nothing but when the query was ran, right? You can see the first record was added according to UTC time zone, right? Few minutes ago. Second record is added according to Indian time zone. So this is how mentioning the time zone parameter in the connection configurations changes the way we changes the time zone that we use for writing to the database. And please, this is an important thing to note, that this time zone parameter is only for writing. Now, just to verify that everything that we saw is correct, I will just change the time zone to Singapore time zone. I'll go back to the configuration. I'll change the time zone to Asia, Singapore. Now, again, I'll see my database is connected. It looks fine. And let me go here. Right now it is 11:46, and in Singapore it is 2:16, right? So I'll run the API call again. As you can see, before I run this, only 2 records in the database. I will run it now. It is a success response, 201 created. I will go back to the database. I will refresh my database. And as you can see, even though my system time is 11:46:47, the time it took for writing to the database is the Singapore time, that is 2:16, 2:17, right? It is 2:17 now, but it ran a few seconds ago, so 2:16. So this confirms our belief, our hypothesis that whenever we mention a time zone parameter in the configurations, config.json file for Sequelize, it will use that particular option in order to write to the database. Please note that this is only for writing to the database and not for reading from the database. Again, so this is what I wanted to show. There are a few more things here which I'll come to, but before I move forward, please let me know if you have understand what changes we did and how it impacted the created at time in our database. Is it clear for everyone?
Yeah, for me it's clear. I'm not sure for others.
Same, it's clear.
Yeah, same here, same here.
Okay, perfect. So this was about writing to the database. Now, one important thing that you might see is that we were focusing on created at field, right? First, it wrote in the UTC time zone, then it wrote in the Indian time zone, and then it wrote in Singapore time zone. However, if you look at the expiry at time field, all these 3 values are representing essentially the same time. End of December in the UTC time zone. This is end of December, but in Indian time zone, because the Indian time zone is 5 hours, 30 minutes ahead. And this is end of December, but in UTC Singapore. End of December, but in Singapore time zone. Yeah. Now, this is something you might think that is inconsistent, but let me take you to why this is happening. And then I'll come to another conclusion that we have, or another finding that we have. So that particular line of code is being added through here. Let me take you through that. I'm assuming that all of us are aware of what moment is and how moment works, since all of us work in JavaScript based environments. Is
Yeah.
anyone unaware of
Yeah.
moment? All right, so I'm going to assume that everyone knows moment. So you can see that expiry at time is being calculated through moment, and I am actually using .utc in the moment. So the rest of it is nothing but finding the end of the next month. Okay, so right now it is November, so it is finding the end of December. But the important part is when I use .utc, it will find that particular time, but with respect to UTC. So for example, whenever we are writing to database using Singapore time, but in our code we have mentioned a UTC time zone, it will be writing to Singapore time zone, but the underlying value represented will still be UTC time zone, right? So this is an important point I wanted you to notice that. Now this is an inconsistency because this is representing in Singapore time zone, this is representing in UTC time zone, but converting it into Singapore. So the point that I'm trying to make is that we don't need a reusable library here. We need some standards that we have to stick to. And those standards can be reading standards and writing standards. And for example, from the point of writing, if we are using UTC, then we should be using UTC everywhere, regardless of what that field is. Or if we are using Singapore time zone, we should be using Singapore time zone everywhere. But we should not be mixing these two time zones. And the reason behind that is, as you can see, let me take you to the structure of this table. You can see created at field is a date time field. Internally, MySQL stores date time as just a string. It does not have any time zone related information associated with it. So a date time field essentially looks like this, as you can see. In 2020, 12/31, that is December, end of December, and then 11:59:59 in the night. Now, this is exactly how this value will be stored. It's just a string and it does not have time zone related information associated with at all. The responsibility of associating the time zone with a date time field in database always lies with the person who is either reading from the database or writing to the database. That is why I said that we need standards to read and write. And how that helps us is if we have a standard that everything that we do time related is done in UTC, in that case, there will be no scope for confusion. And all the operations that we do or set or the events that we run can be safely run in the UTC time zone, and we will be certain that it will take effect and there will be no jumbling related to time zones. So this is an important point that I wanted to bring to the notice, that use standardized read and write time zones. Do not mix and match. In our current setup, we are doing everything in UTC. So that is why you do not see any time zone related parameter in my connection configuration. So because of this, everything happens in UTC. And then in the rewards, whenever I am adding the end of month in the expiry, it is also happening in UTC. This is the standard that I'm using. Next thing I want to bring to your notice is how time is actually represented, and is there any other way that we might do instead of this. So in order to tell you that, I have this is where I'll bring to notice. So there are so many different time zones in the world, and whenever we are developing an application which needs to deal with multiple time zones, right? For example, we are developing a calendar application which you might be writing from the Singapore time zone. For example, Yunchen creating a meeting, but I might be perceiving that, or I might be reading that from an Indian time zone. So we need to make sure that there is some uniform way of us being able to tell that the time that is represented by a particular time value is same regardless of where I'm accessing it from or where I'm reading it from. That is where this particular standard comes in. So ISO 8601 is nothing but a way of representing the date and time in a standardized format. And it works in a very simple manner, and that is here. As you can see, this is how date and time is represented. First, it will represent year, then there will be a hyphen, then there will be a month, and then another hyphen and another, then there will be date. So this is currently representing 10th of November 2020. Then we give a T, which is a delimiter between the date and the time. So after T, we have 060229. That means 6 in the morning, 2 minutes, 29 seconds. These are all 24-hour time zone. So if it was 5 in the evening, it will be 17. Then, so we have represented date, then a demarker or delimiter. Then we have represented time. But then again, we also need to mention which time zone is it. So then we give a plus symbol, and then we give the offset of the time. This can be plus or this can also be minus, because if it is previous to GMT. If it is Singapore time zone, it will be plus 0800. If it is India, plus 0530. This is how we represent a date and time in a standardized format. And if we don't want this 00, you can just represent Z and it will consider that it is in UTC. So this is how date and time zone are represented. Okay. Another thing that I want to bring to your notice is that, okay, now we know that this is how we represent date and time, but how can we use this for our purpose? How can we use this in our Node.js code and make sure that we are using it standardized? So my point, the way you can do it is simple, right? You should only use any time you are using Node.js to do anything time related, always use Moment.js. We already have Moment.js implemented. Never ever use the default implementation of JavaScript that Node.js also supports for time. Never use that. Always use Moment.js, even if you want to simply give the current time. That is, don't even do new date and a bracket. Only do moment .utc and then bracket, because that is the correct way for us to represent the correct time and date, and it gives us a lot of flexibility. So always use Moment.js. Moment.js has a lot of different ways you can represent date, time, format them, right? This is the another point I wanted to bring. Now the experiment that I did, which we saw, and how the data was added in different time zones and how it was manipulated. This was only for writing to the database. There is another thing that is reading from the database, and where we have another option that comes into the picture, where we'll be using dialect options. It's an object, and then we'll be using use UTC true. So I don't really have any controller here which is implementing reading from the database using Sequelize right now. So I can't demo this to you, but I will tell you what this does. So initially what we see, the time zone parameter, that is for writing to the database. Then this is another parameter, use UTC under dialect options. If we mark it as true, any value that you read from the database, any date time value will be treated as UTC. For example, if we are reading these values created at, there are 3 different created at values here. And if you mark the use UTC as true, then we know that we added them just in the difference of 2 minutes. But when we are using use UTC as true, they will be read as UTC. So the system will consider that this was added as 6 o'clock in the morning according to UTC. Then after 5.5 hours, this was added. And after another 2.5 hours, this was added. So this is very important. And this is why I say that if we are using UTC, make sure you're using UTC everywhere. And then in the read options also mark UTC. But If you are not using UTC, if we are, let us say we are using time zone equals to Asia, Singapore, then in that case, you have to explicitly mark use UTC as false. Okay. Because what will happen is you will be writing all the information in the Singapore time zone, but the Sequelize system, when it reads from the database, it will be treating that as UTC time zone. So it is necessary that we follow a very methodical and standardized approach and read and write in the same time zone. And for the simplicity, I would say that always make sure that it is UTC, because anyway, all of this information is going to be consumed by front end, and it is very easy to format any date in any time zone on front end rather than putting that pressure on the back end, because moment.js is also available for front end, and it offers loads and loads of way to format date, as you can see, like multiple local support and multiple ways of representing time, right? Everything that you want, it can do. And it can also do a time zone conversion, right? Moment time, you can use moment time zone plugin, and you can represent any time into any UTC time and convert it into any other time zone, right? It's very simple as just adding this .tz and the time zone that we want. So this is my findings are, and to conclude, I would just recalibrate my conclusion that always use same time zone for reading and writing, and for our purposes make sure that that is UTC. And while consuming the data on front end, always know that the data will be coming in the UTC time zone, and you have to convert it into Singapore time zone or any time zone that there is a need of. Writing to the database, reading is done, moment, time zone, expiry, and library, storing UTC. All right, yeah. This is all that I had for now. If you have any questions, concerns, please feel free to ask me.
Okay, I have. Can you go back to your database?
Yes.
The expiry at, right?
Yes.
So here you are always like saving it as UTC.
In the first record, it is saved as UTC. In the second record, it is the same time that is represented by UTC, but saved in Indian time zone. Let me forget the second
Okay,
record.
so
For your sake of simplicity, I am still storing the UTC end of November, but the UTC end of November for Singapore is the 8 o'clock in the morning on January 1st.
oh, okay. So this one is like the equivalent value of the time zone.
Yes,
Like
yes,
what?
equivalent
Okay.
is correct.
Because I thought
So
you're always. Okay, go ahead.
So sorry, I just interrupt. So basically here, the expiry at representing these three rows representing the same time point, but in different time zones, in three different time zones. Yeah.
Yeah, I got it now. Because I thought like always save the expiry at is always save as UTC. Then this one is not like the UTC value.
So just a fun fact, let me try and show what happens.
But because the end of the day, MySQL doesn't store the time zone information in its date and time string. So we have to be, the application developer should be responsible for interpret or be responsible for standardize the time zone information written into the MySQL database.
Just to clarify on that point, right? Let me show you one more tweak that we can do, or how it works if we don't have to use UTC and if we have to use Singapore. Now I have mentioned Singapore as time zone. Now I will go back, and this particular field that you see expiry at, this field is coming from here, line number 81. I am taking UTC time zone here. Now let me remove the UTC part. Okay. Now essentially what it's doing is taking the current time, and then depending on that, finding the end of next month. There is no mention of UTC. So current time, it's going to take current time, and current time is right. Okay. And now I will add another record and see what is the representation that we see. Add another one. It is added at 12:04 or 03, and Singapore time is 2:34, 2:33. Let's come back here. Let's refresh this. as you can see, it is added at Singapore time zone, but this is taking the, this is also taking November 1st. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Because if it's
So-
December 31, then this should be December 31.
yeah.
What happened there is adding 1 day.
No,
Just a
because
second.
you are running on your own laptop, right? Your laptop is India time zone. So the moment will just use your laptop time zone and then generates the time string data and time string using the Indian time zone. So that's why it's 2.5 hour difference.
That was the difference between India and Singapore time zone.
Yeah.
Now what I did is I'm doing a moment.time zone, taking the Singapore time zone right now. Let us see what happens, right? This is just a way of us experimenting with and seeing what changes if we do things like that. Now go back. It added at 12:05, right? Okay. So now you can see it is still added at Singapore time, 2:35 in the night. And because in the code where we generated expiry at, we explicitly mentioned that take the current time zone of Singapore. And then it is representing end of November.
Yeah.
Again,
Singapore.
Again, if you look at it in an isolated manner, this makes no sense because this.
No, it is Singapore time zone.
Yeah.
They are same, but they are same because the first time zone is in UTC and you generate the first time string using UTC. So it's end of the day. End of the day is the end of the month. And the final row is that you generate using the Singapore time zone. It's also end of the day, end of the month. So it's exactly the same. But actually they have different time zone information carries with it.
Yeah. So essentially this value and this value look the same to us because in the database it is stored just as a string and these two are same strings. But we know that this was generated using UTC and this was generated using Singapore time zone. Now the trick here is that if you are comparing these two times, okay, for example, if you are in a query where you are comparing these two times, these will be marked as equal.
Yeah.
Right? And the tricky thing is, let's say you are in Singapore and you are comparing using Singapore time zone. That means this particular time should be less than, or there should be 8-hour gap between this time and the Singapore time. And this should be equal to the Singapore time. But because these are just two strings and converted into date without the time zone, those will be marked as the same time zone. So that is why it is always important that we follow a standard time zone approach. So I'll remove this.
Okay. So can I just wrap up? We don't have much time left because our Zoom meeting only have 40 minutes, 40 minutes limit. So we almost have only 2 minutes and 2.5 minutes left. All right. So let me just thank you, Qingmei, for the explanation. I think it's very good and very detailed and very comprehensive. I think let me just wrap up the takeaway from Qingmei's sharing. So basically, what we need to do is that we need to make a standardized approach in our source code. So everything stored in our database is right now using UTC. So all the date string is in UTC time zone. Although it's not specified in the MySQL database itself, but we are now have a consensus that all the date string stored in the MySQL database is UTC. Okay, so that's why in our middleware, the Node.js middleware, the Node.js application layer, we also have to make sure all the date and time related string should be in UTC time zone, right? Should be consistent with the MySQL database. And when we return the string to the front end, we should also carry over the UTC time zone string in the date string time, okay? So that it will avoid the confusion, as well as from the front end to call the backend API, any parameters in the front end API should also carry over the UTC time zone information. And depends on the front end, where the front ends run, then the front end can render the string based on the time zone that the front end is running. Okay, front end can change the time. Front end can render the time information based on the front end locations, right? Because as long as we have the time zone information in the data, the front end can render it based on its own time zone information, right? So basically, we have to treat it as a rule of thumb. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Sorry,
Thank
Chinmay,
you.
can you stay?
Thank you very much.
Chinmay,
Yes.
can you stay?
I think we'll have to join on
We
Google Meet
have
because-
to join another Google Meet because they have 40 minutes.
Oh.
Please send me
Okay,
a link.
yeah, sure. I will just send an invitation then.
Thank
Okay.
you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.